Well, hello there and welcome to the bathroom of the dollhouse, where all the big thinking gets done, for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers for April 30th, the day of Dutiful Overload. That's right. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of Dutiful Overload. We have what appears to be, what could it be? Oh, it looks to be a big coil of rope beside an unbound coil of rope. Do you see? That's right. Now, does that speak to the day of dutiful overload? I don't know. Who's to say? Sometimes you can't make heads or tails of why they choose the image that they choose. That said, not altogether all too important. What is important is it's April 30th and it's somebody's birthday. So if today's your birthday, I just want to say happy birthday. That's what's important. But hey, maybe this video finds you a couple days late, couple weeks, couple months, whatever the case may be. If that is the case, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday. All right. That said, other times folks join us just to find out a little bit more of the day. And if that's the case, hey, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that is roll some dice. That's right. This is the Diecast birthday broadcast. So I like to live up to the namesake, but if you've been here before or you just want to get to the redirect, hey, skip ahead in the chapters, all right? No big deal. I'll be here rolling the dice the bright way because I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled what appears to be a 3 and a 6 for a 9. Now, what is synchronicity? You may be wondering if you stuck around. Well, my friends, as I hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be will oftentimes put things in our path to help us manifest our goals or aspire to our aspirations. But a lot of times we got the blinders up to what's going on around us or coming across our path. So we may be apt to miss such things or maybe not lend them much credence if we do see them. That said, this is to help us try to identify such things. But how do we do that? Well, you got to have some kind of signpost that's mutually agreed upon between you and higher powers that be so you can identify as much. That's right, your daily numbers, all right? So outside of seeing your daily numbers, you can drill down on this even further if you take it out into the world. Say ascribe directional values to number sets. So you roll a 1 through a 3, that's a north direction, 4 through a 6, east, and so on. But you can also ascribe time values to go in those directions and drill down even further with, say, evens and odds for yeses or nos or lefts and rights, all right? It's all up to what you and the universe agree upon, if you like. But that said, once you've got those parameters established, hey, go out to some place that's near and dear to your heart or some place you want to explore and put it to practice, all right? But that said, you got to drop those blinders because outside of seeing your daily numbers creep up, maybe on addresses or bus numbers or, I don't know, subway lines, those kinds of things, you might start to see a theme take place on the day. All right, let's say the coil of rope, for instance. Maybe you start seeing coils of rope in weird places or coming across your path. But that said, whatever this thing that pops up in your day happens to be, it doesn't have to be the actual object itself. It could be a visual representational image of as much. Say the big coil of rope painted on a storefront window or in an advertisement, billboard on the side of a building. Who's to say? You just got to keep your eyes open and your mind right for such things to enter into your life. That said, I would just use this as an indication that you're on the right path. That said, hey, maybe you get 7, 8 different dice rolls deep into this thing and you're not seeing much of anything. Hey, never fret, all right? At least you're getting your steps in. But I would say take a step back, pause, collect yourself. Maybe no sooner do you roll that 9th dice roll and hey, somebody stops and asks you what you're up to. Just be cordial, let them know what you're up to. Hey, maybe point them to this video or encapsulate what I just told you. They might be apt to tell you you're crazy. Hey, lay it on my shoulders. This dude's crazy. I'm just out here trying to shake up my birthday. They might be apt to agree, but they might say it's crazy for a different reason. Hey, maybe it's their birthday too, all right? Now, strange things have happened, but that's the kind of synchronicity I'm talking about. And they might just be apt to put down their day and join you, all right? So maybe the universe was leading you to meet this individual, make a new friend. I don't know. That said, if somebody does join you on this, I hear it's even greater chances of more results happening. Something about more people focused on the same goals begetting greater results, all right? So give it a shot. I think you got the idea, all right? So look out for your numbers, look out for some kind of universal theme. And if you see, taste, touch, smell, intuit, or hear even just a little bit of such happenstance, you'll understand why I brought it up. All right, I think you get the idea. Let's get on with the birthday read. That's why you're here. All right, your month is April. Your day is the 30th. Your sign is 9 to 11 degrees Taurus of the Taurus I period specifically. And your quality and element is fixed earth. Here we go. April 30th, the day of dutiful overload. April 30 people are dominating personalities, but often have a desire to give up positions of responsibility and retire to a life of gracious ease. In discharging their professional responsibilities, they live by the book, not easily granting exceptions or special responsibilities. I think I said that already. They're not easily granting exceptions or specializing, rather, in shows of human understanding, unless it lies in the general interest to do so. And though they may make exacting bosses and managers, they are good enough to hold themselves to the same standards. And because for many born on this day, duty is a god, they can be too reluctant to question their own basic assumptions or those of their superiors, and thus run the risk of doing a good job while heading off in the wrong direction morally. Those that become aware of these tendencies stand a greater chance of success over the long haul, though they may at first be uncomfortable with uncertainty that they will experience. Probably the greatest need of April 30 people in an authoritative position is to be loved and respected by those working under them. As colleagues, they both enjoy and thrive on the warmth of comradeship. And in return, they tend to be highly protective toward their staff or fellow workers, who remain in their favor as long as there is an agreement on certain basic issues. And for those they dislike or consider beneath their dignity, those born on this day generally exhibit scorn or contempt. The need of April 30 people for affection from family and friends is also great. What they prize in relationships is freedom from irritations and strife, wishing both to be cared for and left alone. Children learn soon enough how to get their way and what they want from an April 30 parent, who may seem intractable, but in reality is putty in the hands of a cleverly manipulative son or daughter. And those born in this day are particularly vulnerable to the charms of a child of the opposite sex. And the way to persuade an April 30 person is most certainly not head on. Like a true Taurus bull, he or she will prove stubborn and immovable against what is perceived as aggression. On the other hand, those born on this day admire grace as well as cleverness, even when they see that a subtle argument is being used to turn them around. They must be aware of their tendency to bully others psychologically and intimidating them through silence or implied threats. And April 30 people sometimes reject their own power, particularly women who may relinquish authority to their father, brother, or mate. And they should consider such a choice carefully, for it may eventually cause them unhappiness and frustration. Often mothers born on this day sublimate ambitious desires in their offspring. And the nurturing qualities of this day tend to be very great, but April 30 parents must avoid smothering their children with too much well-meant attention. All right, pretty interesting birthday breakdown today, to be sure. All right, pretty well-rounded in my estimations, all right? And I say that because there's been a few in past days that have been very hyper-focused, more on a micro level than today's macro. That said, I'd like to provide a little bit of a commentary, kind of dive into the things that were relayed in the breakdown, make comparisons to days previous, also, the period at large, also the book at large. So let's get into it here. Here we go. April 30, the day of the dutiful overload. All right, you're said to have dominating personalities, And the reading claims that you live by the rules when it comes to your professional life, to the point that you may be otherwise strict in holding others to account, okay? But you aren't so exacting as to not be understanding when it's necessary or best serves the mission. That said, the reading also conveys a sense of personal integrity as well. You hold yourself to the same standards of practice, I would say. But the reading also relates that your duty-bound edicts may also steer you wrong if you become too captured in your dedication to said duty, all right? The reading also goes on to relate just how important your professional life is to you, perhaps even more so than days previous, as focused as it was today. And that's saying something, all right? This whole period of Taurus has been duty-bound, domineering people. So if it's bringing it up for you, it must be that much more relevant. But the reading then changes tack to explore the importance of those you share this part of your life with, okay? This specific social component is interesting as it hasn't been one that I recall being explored for some time, at least in recent memory. So it must be a standout facet considering the days previous where career is a priority. Protection and camaraderie with the coworkers or staff, it's only just been kind of hinted at recently, all right, to say that they put fairness out into the workplace. That's about it. Here they talked about camaraderie and the like. So it's evolving, if you like, as we get further into Taurus. To that end, however, the topic of scorn or contempt for those you may consider beneath you, that's novel, new, and unique to you, all right? Albeit destructive tempers have come up and been conveyed recently. So the through line of not being someone to be trifled with, hey, that's continuing in no small part, I would say. Then the reading then tacks away from career and relates similarly prized concern for your family and your friends, all right? Which may seem to naturally follow, but this same seeming dynamic has only in recent days begun to appear as it happens. It wasn't but 3 or 4 days ago family was actually seen as an inconvenience to people outside of the workplace. It's something they didn't want in their lives. It needed to be left alone, put it away, get out of my way. It's very interesting that it was related in that way. So this mention of such a hardline personality, that's you, I mean, being putty in the hands of a child's charms and their adroit manipulations. That's quite surprising, but welcome in the entry, okay? I also appreciate the reading giving advice as to how to persuade the more stubborn and intractable natures for you, as that's not something that they usually throw in the breakdown. Advice to other people of how to deal with you. So I like they put that in there. But with warnings of using psychological tactics to bully or the silent treatment to intimidate and the potential to over-nurture, there's a lot going on here today, all right? Some of it novel, to say the silent treatment and the bullying, for instance, that hasn't come up. But some of it's rather common for the period, to say the over-nurturing aspect. That said, there may be a reason for that. It's something that popped up in Aries 3. Aries on the large, almost everybody drummed up antagonists, all right? For Aries 1, they were too good at their job and they attracted a lot of friends, and so envy would come into the mix and people would be, they would get antagonists out of envy. Then as it got through to Aries 2, they were the star and, they were capturing attention and, again, a little bit of that. But then Aries 3 and the Aries-Taurus cusp, this nurturing aspect came into it. More so for the Aries-Taurus cusp, but for Aries 3, they were getting into people's lives and being controlling and telling them how to live and this and that. And that would drum up antagonism. Here, it's kind of transitioned into a nurturing aspect. You got your hands on the wheel too much, there's just too much going on with the people you care about. It comes from a good place, but at a certain point, you got to kick the bird out of the nest, all right? Or it drums up the antagonism, apparently. So we're still seeing that through line come through. Like I said, there may be a reason for it. So let's dive into your numbers and your planets. Here you go, a little bit of astrology. Those born on the 30th of the month are ruled by the number 3 and the planet Jupiter. And those ruled by the number 3 tend to rise to the highest positions in their sphere, at home or at work. They also love their independence, and therefore frustration may be encountered by those April 30 people who must be involved socially and cannot free themselves from certain obligations. Jupiter lends an optimistic and expansive outlook to April 30 people and is enhanced by a love of beauty and comfort from Venus, the ruler of Taurus. All right, not too much said here today with the numbers and planets. That said, it is rather personalized just by looking at the copy. A lot of times it's a copy-paste job outside of them changing the numbers in and out. And we saw that the other day with a typo where it said March, not April, interestingly enough. That said, let's see if I can pick up a little bit of the slack here for you, impart a little bit extra. All right, here we go. The number 3 in the expansive planet Jupiter, the jovial planet for a, what do you call here, a drive to rise to the highest positions in your sphere, and a love for independence that may come into conflict, not just with your social obligations, but considering the planet Venus and its grounded concern for love, harmony, and beauty, it may also conflict with the private life, all right, that you wish to have in the bargain. That said, Jupiter is an optimistic planet, and it's also said to impart philosophical and dynamic outlooks that lend one to seek the most positive and constructive approaches to solving problems, as mentioned elsewhere in the book. And in some entries, it imparts no uncertain amount of luck. So hey, that might be in the bargain too, even if they didn't mention it, all right? So coupled to Venus with its concern for harmony, I'd also be apt to argue that even if you face hardship or conflict, you're so intrinsically geared, I'd say you're intrinsically geared to see your way through such difficulties, all right? You just got to apply yourself, okay? And from what we saw in the breakdown, I'd say you're going to handle it quite aptly, all right? That said, that's what I had to add in there for the numbers and planets. And I think I made mention of there being a reason for this nurturing aspect. Well, that's Venus coming into the bargain, all right? Just that uncompromising, unconditional love. And it's got to go somewhere because you're seeking that harmony. You're seeking that balance. And that's just imparted by that planet, ostensibly. But that said, Jupiter comes in and it heightens it a little bit, but it's got its own priorities, so they may come into conflict when the powers are coupled. In any event, interesting ideas, but there you go. All right, so with that being said, let's move on to your tarot. All right, let's get the book centered and framed so I can stay centered. Here we go. The third card of the major arcana is the Empress, symbolizing creative intelligence. She is the perfect woman, the ultra-feminine Mother Earth nurturer, who is our dreams made real, our hopes and aspirations embodied. This card represents positive traits of charm, grace, and unconditional love, and negative traits of vanity, affectation, and intolerance for imperfection. All right. Hey, does that sound like anybody we know? Very interesting. This was a copy-paste job through and through. Sometimes they'll button it with a little bit of a this relates here or there, or, you know, watch out for this. Not here today, all right? Not totally out of form. Like I said, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes if they personalize the numbers and planets, tarot's where the trade-off is. That said, I wrote a little bit about it. Let's dive in here. The Empress, symbolizing creative intelligence, perhaps your drive to realize your way through issues, both through your trademark brands of dedication to duty, but also through a synthesis of warm and positive nurturing that sets you apart from your peers, all right? At least insofar as you care about what other people are doing, all right? How they're faring. You know, providing they don't cross you, that is, all right? But with representations of charm, grace, and unconditional love, while not expressly stated as directly applying to you in the breakdown. If we read between the lines and the likes of what you're chiefly influenced by, I'd say you can't be appreciative of something if you aren't in possession of it, all right? At least to some degree. So I'd say you probably have it. So I would say the card probably applies to that end. The likes of which also probably needs to be employed if you rise to the top of your sphere, I would argue, all right? But with negatives of vanity and affectation or false appearance, phoniness, all right? I don't know that I picked up on those so much, at least with regard to appearance. Though I might contend the excessive pride aspect of vanity may be something to be mindful of. Right? Too much excessive pride in your appearance to be the definition of vanity. Maybe there's just a little bit of excessive pride in your gumption there. All right, so at least that's how I would interpret it based on what we read in the breakdown. So with all of that being taken into account, I'd say the card is pretty apt, all right? And I've seen cards that just, they did not seem to apply, all right? But that said, the cards are on a rotation, so you never know what you're going to get, all right? They don't just cherry pick the best one for you. Though that said, that may be the best one for you. I would argue it may just be. That said, that's been your tarot. Pretty painless, I'd say. Let's move on to your health. Here we go. Overindulgence of the senses, whether by eating, drinking, use of drugs, or sex, can pose dangers for April 30 people. Perhaps sensuality can be channeled into less problematical pursuits. In the case of April 30 people who subordinate themselves to another, the danger of internalized anger leading to depression, ulcers, or even cancer is real and best dealt with preventatively through psychological treatments. Regular exercise outdoors is recommended for April 30 people, but the only danger being is that the activity may become a passion that interferes with the business life. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and salads are recommended as an alternative to heavy meats and starch consumption. All right. Pretty typical health entry here, at least the way they formatted it. Little subtle differences, but no big deal. Let's dive into what I had to say about it. Elaborate a little bit. Said to be overindulgent by nature, which should be properly channeled. All right. This is a very novel inclusion, I would say. All right. Haven't seen this kind of thing in a while, maybe months. All right. Perhaps Jupiter's influence on Venus. No telling. Same can be said for the psychological subordination leading to anger or ill health. All right. The psychological aspects don't tend to pop up in the health entry. So I'd say don't necessarily poo-poo the notion, all right? They interviewed, like, from what I've read, each birthday they interviewed a whole smorgasbord of individuals, and they took common denominators to kind of flesh out the copy. So, you know, it may have applied to no small number of people there. So just give it some consideration, I would say. All right. Your drive for independence must be that strong, I also wrote. I didn't complete my sentence. All right, what else do we have here? They said regular measured exercise outside in nature, all right? Probably that Venus grounded aspect to it benefits you in some way. You know, getting your feet in the grass if you like grounding yourself. But that hasn't come up here in recent days. Normally it's just been mild to moderate. They also mentioned the diet with the earthy foods. Typically, ever since the Aries-Taurus cusp, it's been vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. And that's been following through. I think it was only yesterday where they mentioned that you need to moderate that for some reason. I don't know. But here you kind of picked back up with it. Though I think they said, no, interferes, passion. Yeah, there you go. They didn't say moderated. You're good to go. Oh, pardon the pause there. That said, the Taurus body areas are the throat, the ears, the palate, the thyroid, and the like. So make sure you're taking care of those, taking your medications and the like. They even mentioned the likes of singing for therapy for one individual. So a lot of things focused here. Taking care of the voice was mentioned yesterday. So I can't help but think that that carries forward to today. So take care of such things if you can, all right? Mind them. Also interesting is when a body area pops up, sometimes in the health, they'll say be mindful of injuries to those areas. So it must be like somehow people are kind of, injuries gravitate to those areas perhaps. I don't know. That's just interesting they bring it up in that way. That said, that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. Here we go. Try to listen as much as possible to your inner voice and ask for higher guidance before making decisions. Consider the advice of your colleagues and your friends and cultivate tolerance, they say. Keep a handle on your desires and be more self-aware. All right, interesting. Here we go. Let's get into some advice. Now, I had to write it in a book, so bear with me, and I wrote a little bit, so here we go. Try to listen to your inner voice and ask for guidance, they wrote here. I said cultivate objectivity, all right? It's kind of a through line theme for the book, okay? We got to analyze our emotions, set them aside sometimes. A lot of cases this period, pretty easy for folks to do, to put their emotions aside. Didn't say much about that today, but hey, I'd say it's an ingrained, intrinsic part of the period, so you probably have it within you anyhow. What else do they have? I have here. Beware making rash decisions, perhaps, is what they're getting at. Not sure where it comes from outside of leaning into overindulgence, like they said in the health, but I didn't see where this came up in the breakdown, so I wasn't preloaded to think that you overindulge in things. So that was interesting. So where that came from, kind of confusing. But again, they interviewed a lot of people for these days, so maybe they noticed as much through there. You may have been a common theme. That said, maybe mind whether the bullying, contempt, or the psychological games are really necessary, okay, insofar as the breakdown is concerned, all right? Might just be some of that emotional aspect, who's to say? Venus and Jupiter might be a little bit of a loggerheads, considering the expansive planet and more grounded nature, all right? Might be a little bit of a dynamic problem there. If we're looking at an interplanetary sense, all right? They said consider advice of colleagues as well as friends, all right? You don't have to figure everything out yourself, even though I know you probably want to. But that said, maybe just talking about things helps you figure things out better. Hearing yourself talk about it. Like I said, the voice is a Taurus thing, you know, so communication is huge. Don't be so stubborn that you get in your own way. Too prideful, if you like, okay? What else do you have here? Keep a handle on your desires and be more self-aware. All right, here we go. Cultivating self-awareness is an overarching theme in the book, all right? Also like a Buddhist tenet, all right? Discover your own self-nature. Huge work, hard work, okay? What else do I have? It's gone unmentioned for some time as it happens. So, but asking the hard questions of yourself and doing the work no one wants to do to that end, hey, you know what? It applies to everybody, I would say. So be duty bound to yourself in no small part, all right? I'm assuming you're going to make the appropriate decisions eventually, all right? At least based on what we read in the breakdown. All right, that's what I'd say about your advice. Pretty interesting. Like I said, they brought up the self-awareness. Hasn't come up in a while. That said, that's been your advice. Let's move on to your meditation. That's right here. Ego massage is a pleasant pastime, but hardly the most rewarding. All right, very interesting. One more time. Ego massage is a pleasant pastime, but hardly the most rewarding. All right, kind of have an idea why they put this in here for you, but not much on one. All right, that said, it's not my birthday, not my meditation. It's just yours. So even if I had an idea, I wouldn't relate it to you, all right? Wouldn't serve you, okay? It'd probably make you lean one way to think about it. And, you know what? You get the point. Your birthday, your meditation. That said, your meditation in a can. Let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's see where you got the girth, if you like, or we otherwise a little more atrophied in the bargain, all right? There we go. Let's see if we noticed any of these, picked up on them. Sometimes they throw something in there that surprises me. Here we go. Your strengths. You're protective. Well, I picked up on that. Professional. That too. And you're resolute. Okay. All right. What's your weaknesses? So, what could those be? Here we go. Did we pick up on them? It says you're demanding, immoderate, self-indulgent. All right. Hey, maybe a little bit. But you know what? They're telling us it's not new news. So, hey, that's the good news. All right. That said, I often like to make the case our strengths are going to help us overcome our weaknesses. But I also like to say that our weaknesses can be strengths in and of themselves. So let's do the work here. Let's try to make my case. All right. Okay, here we go. Your strengths, how can they help you overcome your weaknesses? You're protective of not just your family and friends, but your subordinates as well. So I assume you're going to be protective of yourself as you get after trying to improve upon your weaknesses. All right. You're professional. Hey, look, you're out there in the social sphere doing the duty, right? Hey, be professional towards yourself. And you're going to be professional in your approach to solving such problems once you identify them. And then you're resolute, all right? Definition of that, you're determined, you're firm, unwavering of belief and purpose. Unwavering of purpose. you're going to attack those problems that you got, all right? That said, how can your weaknesses be strengths? You know what? Taurus has been a head scratcher. They've been very difficult because they look like negatives through and through, but let's give it a shot here. They said you're demanding. All right. Hey, you know what? I would say it's just you expect a certain kind of perfection. All right. What else is right here? You have clear expectations, though. All right. That's a strength. You're also understanding and you're serious, and that's all strong leadership qualities. Okay. We just have to have self-awareness about it. Also, our finger on the pulse of the situation is being demanding in this particular realm really necessary. Okay, maybe it's a minor little thing. Hey, you know what? We just need to throw somebody on it to do the data entry. It's not, as long as they're getting it right, it's not something that's just, huge, all right? Or maybe it is, depending upon maybe the company's trying to sell themselves to some bit larger conglomerates. Things got to be perfect. So in that respect, you got to convey to your folks, hey, this needs done exactly the way it's going to be done, and I'm going to come down with a heavy hammer if it don't. You know what I'm saying? So measure, understand, all right? But the other things like the janitor cleaning the bathroom, hey, at least it's getting it done. It's not a huge issue as long as it's getting done. So what else do we have here? Immoderates. All right. Hey, you know what? I had to look this one up just to be sure, and I think I didn't quite have a clear idea. What do we got here? Exceeding normal or appropriate bounds. Excessive is a synonym as it happens. Also, unreasonable. All right. So, hey, not a good look as it happens. How can that be a strength? All right. What did I write here? You expect the best. All right. Is it achievable? You might want to ask yourself that question if you're immoderate, okay? Who knows unless you try, quite honestly, okay? Sometimes you have to aim for the stars to hit the moon, all right? But you're exceeding normal bounds. You're also setting yourself apart from things. So, hey, you know what? You might garner a little bit of worship from certain individuals. That's a strength, okay? They're going to try to emulate your example. And that's not a bad thing considering what we know about you from the breakdown, all right? You're also setting yourself apart from individuals, rising to the top, okay? Just apply it properly as the health mentioned with otherwise less problematic pursuits, okay? Self-awareness. So to say don't be extending yourself and being over excessive where it doesn't need to be done. Let's said all of that, all right? Self-indulgent, here we go. We got to creatively thorough in your exploration or your passions and your interests, all right? And you're going to go through and get an understanding of all those things. But that said, you know what? I can see where they say it's a weakness, okay? People out there excessively enjoying themselves, maybe spending frivolously in places where it doesn't need to be done. That said, such things can help prevent burnout in terms of self-care. So to talk about how it's a strength, it can help tend to sickness because you're hyper-focused on yourself. And stress relief. Hey, I need that bubble bath, all right? I need those candles to help me get the stress out, because stress has been a huge theme this period, all right? Everybody's working themselves to the bone, and also a lot of repression of emotions, and you got to blow that steam off somewhere. So I would imagine, since you're domineering in this respect too, insofar as the breakdown's concerned, there's going to be no untold amount of stress that you need to let go, all right? So self-indulgence good for that reason too. As to outside application, how can this be a strength? We've got here sharing your indulgent nature with peers, friends, family. Hey, you're going to drum up experiences and better solidify the relationship, all right? Hey, we've got these things to think back on. The friendship's so much better, right? Or maybe those that you've got a little bit of that consternation for. Hey, you know what? We need an ally in this individual. Let's treat them a little bit. You know how to do that. You know how to wine and dine them. So there's a strength, all right? And what else do we have here? Personal growth, self-awareness, like I said, motivation to pursue further accomplishment. Okay, so you know what? I think the case, even if none of that made any sense, if I floundered completely, the case still stands. Use your strengths to improve upon your weaknesses, but don't throw your weaknesses out with the trash altogether, all right? Because they're part of who you are. You can probably use them, okay? That said, that's been your strengths and your weaknesses. Let's turn to those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is take a moment to think about our passion and our purpose. Because a lot of times I meet individuals who are just living to punch the alarm clock in the morning. to roll out of bed, make it to work on time so they can punch the time clock. And then at the end of the week, they're just rallying to do it all over again. A vicious cycle. There's nothing else in their life to get them out of bed doing backflips to get into such things. All right. And so that's what the aim is here today, to plant the seed for you to figure out your passion or your purpose. Because sometimes that takes harder work than it does to chase after or employ the passion, I would argue. So, hey, let's use what these folks that got in the book did as an example, all right? And if anything, just plant the seed, like I said. Because if there's anything I wish for someone on their birthday, it's that they're chasing after a passion, finding life fulfilling, all right? But for those of you that already have a passion in your life, well then, hey, the hat I'm not wearing's off to you. Let's just see who shares your company. All right, here we go. We have Queen Juliana, a Dutch 20th century ruler, as a princess and spent World War II in Canada. Abdicated in favor of her daughter Beatrice. We have Queen Mary II, the British 17th, 18th century ruler with Dutch husband William of Orange. Willie Nelson, a country western singer and a film actor in the bargain. We have Eve Arden, a comedian, film and TV actress. And let's see if these folks had some dutiful overload, like the title says, all right? I would say the Queens did, for sure, most likely. We have Percy Heath, a jazz bassist and a modern jazz quartet member. And Jill Clayburgh, a film actress. Isaiah Thomas, the Detroit Pistons all-star basketball guard, MVP, 4th all-time in playoff assists. Don Scholander, a U.S. Olympic 5-time gold medal winning swimmer. We also have Frederick Chiluba, a Zambian president. Catherine Toll, U.S. Marine Corps head, it says. Franz Lahar, operetta composer. Alice B. Toklas, a Gertrude Stein's partner cook and responsible for the Alice B. Toklas cookbook. Also John Crow Ransom, a poet, critic, and founder of the Kenyon Review. We also have Herbert Ferber, an abstract expressionist painter and a sculptor. We also have Peter Ahrens, Ahrends, British architect. Joachim von Ribbentrop, Nazi foreign minister and convicted at Nuremberg for war crimes and hanged. Hey, you know what? Not enough self-awareness, it sounds like. Too duty-bound, perhaps, all right? So, hey, look out for the lesser evolved, all right? Example of what not to do, okay? We also have Corinne Calvert, a film actress. J.P. Humphreys, a Canadian UN human rights worker. We also have Robert Shaw, a choral orchestra conductor. Robert Shaw Choral Atlantic Symphony, probably his symphony there. I thought it was another person. We also have Louis Silcox, a mechanical engineer for the U.S. Canadian Railroads. All right. And that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, all right? And I know I butchered a few names in there. All the IXs on the ends of names say, you know what, it's not done in malice, it's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't necessarily work for me with the name. So a little butchering on my side of things to make up for it. That said, hey, we recognize some folks, at least Willie Nelson on my end. Some of the others, not so much. So I would say the field of play is wide open for you to make your mark, all right? Despite the book having already been written. That said, hey, you know what? Like I said, if there's anything I can wish for somebody on their birthday, it's that they're chasing after a passion. So just plant the seed, get you thinking about it, right? Because that's the hard work, like understanding yourself and nature. That said, like I said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, except to say your season is spring, your sign once again is Taurus, of the Taurus I period specifically, and your quality and element is fixed earth. What does that mean? Well, that's a whole host of other videos I have down in the description or at the end if you click on if you like. But that said, this has been April 30th, the day of dutiful overload of The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Use Elfers. All right, I don't know that we made a connection with the rope there, but hey, like I said, not altogether all too important. Not when it's someone's birthday, all right? Because what's important here? Wishing you a happy birthday, all right? That said, I have a link for this book down in the description if you're interested in picking up a copy. It makes an excellent coffee table book to break out at parties, get the party started off for better or for worse, reading folks their birthdays. But hey, it's going to get the conversation started, all right? And I have that above a personal message I put together for the birthday boys and girls. So check those out if you're interested. That said, you know what? For everybody else who joined us, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves and you join us for your birthday reading. All right. Before I take us out, hey, just remember, like I said at the top, your daily numbers. All right. Get out there and let the universe show you it's with you on your path. You stir up even just a little bit of happenstance, you have to see why I brought it up for you. All right. So that said, cultivate the self-awareness. Get out there, moderate yourself insofar as the the bullying is concerned, if that's a thing that exists according to the breakdown. And communicate with folks, all right, and keep being dutifully, I don't know, supportive of ourselves. Yeah, there you go. All right, you got it within you to do so. Overcome your obstacles if you like. And objective, that's huge. All right, overcome those emotions if they apply. All right. That said, once again, you heard it here. Happy birthday. All right, take care of yourselves.